Mexican authorities are offering people participating in a migrant caravan towards the United States the possibility of legalizing their status in the country. The COP26 conference has begun in the Scottish city of Glasgow as activists announced that thousands have been blocked from making their voices heard. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's ruling Liberal Democratic Party held on to a majority in Sunday's parliamentary election, according to exit polls. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Mexico, where authorities are offering people participating in a migrant caravan the possibility of legalizing their status in the country. The National Institute of Migration stated in a press release that members of the caravan had rejected the proposal made by the National Human Rights Commission to transfer them to federal capitals to process the migratory documents that would legalize their stay in the country. Despite the refusal, the authorities are calling on any person in need to seek medical attention, especially in the case of pregnant women, children and disabled people, noting that facilities will provide them with care. The Institute reiterated its willingness to issue humanitarian visas to enable those who are planning to make the dangerous journey north to the United States to instead remain in Mexico. Meanwhile, the Mexican government denounced manipulation of the issue of migrant caravans in the media. Mexican authorities underlined that they're seeking to regularize the status of many of the members of the massive caravans that pass through its territory and reiterated the intention to provide humanitarian assistance to pregnant women, children and the disabled by issuing humanitarian visas. The National Institute of Migration stressed that the issue is being manipulated by certain media outlets in order to attack the Mexican government, despite the fact that it is not responsible for the migratory crisis. As the Mexican capital softens COVID-19 restrictions, celebrations to mark the annual Day of the Dead festival are springing up again. Authorities have installed 150 sites across the city for people to make offerings. They also erected a memorial for victims of COVID-19 and invited relatives to come and remember their loved ones with photos or other tributes. The photos will be turned into memorial albums. Officials hope the event will help provide some closure to people who weren't able to say goodbye to their loved ones due to COVID-19 restrictions. The Day of the Dead festival runs until November 2nd.
The intention of this place is to create a memorial and offering for all those who sadly died as a result of COVID-19 and whose relatives could not say goodbye in the way they would have liked.
I like this. I feel relieved they have these government programs. Now that I posted this picture, I told myself, you didn't come today, you didn't go out, yet here you are.
In the Brazilian state of Sao Paulo, a rescue operation is underway to save firefighters who were trapped in a cave when the roof collapsed during a training session. A group of 26 firefighters were participating in the training exercise when the incident occurred. 3 suffered fractures and hypothermia, and 8 others were rescued uninjured, while 15 remained trapped. Police and emergency health teams have joined firefighters in a desperate effort to free them. The Haitian population continues to suffer the surge in gang violence and a lack of control by the authorities. In the latest episode of violence in the capital, Port-au-Prince, at least 4 people were wounded amid a shootout at a school as gang members attempted to kidnap students. Haitian police authorities have not yet offered concrete information on the incident. The extreme insecurity in the country has even put the distribution of food and fuel at risk, since gangs are blocking movements from the country's ports, threatening the operations of everything from hospitals to telecommunications. Human rights organisations have denounced the complicity of government officials with gang leaders as part of moves to neutralise their political opponents in a nation suffering a long-standing political crisis. In Bolivia, the national and local governments are preparing measures to be implemented in the face of the imminent 4th wave of the novel coronavirus pandemic, which has already begun to manifest itself in 3 of the country's 9 departments. Our correspondent Freddie Morales has the details.
Mayors, governors and the national government are in charge of the 3 levels of healthcare. They all participate in this kind of summit that defines measures to face the imminent 4th wave of the novel coronavirus. They are committing themselves to implement more vaccination points, to carry out campaigns in markets and other centers with a high influx of people, and this will be intensively extended.
We have to fight together against the anti-vaccination groups. That is the biggest problem we have had in the city of El Alto, the platforms that misinform about vaccination.
The stock of resources to deal with the 4th wave is promising. Vaccines are available, although there is still resistance from sectors of the population to receive them. And there are enough free medicines available. The number of antigen diagnosis points nationwide has increased by 2,567. And we have acquired 4,435 antigen tests. Similarly, in terms of human resources, we are committed to immediately hiring 1,806 people to continue strengthening the intensive and intermediate care units. Vaccination has reached 63% of the population with the first dose, and more than 53% with the second dose, at a time when it is virtually accepted that the 4th wave has already entered the country. Some departments where this is the beginning are Santa Cruz, Cochabamba and Chuquichaca. But we cannot speak of 4th wave in the country because there are no several departments that do not have a 4th wave. President Luis Arce from the Department of Beni called for an all-out fight against the novel coronavirus and recalled that this is also a definite phase in the fight against poverty. We must all be aware that the economic recovery has a fundamental assumption. To recover health for all, there will be no reconstruction, no reactivation of the economy in the country if we do not solve the pandemic problem first. From March 2020 to date, the country has officially recorded 505,000 cases of the novel coronavirus, with almost 19,000 deaths. The case fatality rate in the 2nd and 3rd waves was 2.7%. With an imminence of the 4th wave, the Health Ministry warned that in case of flu or cold is considered COVID until proven otherwise.
And we'll be right back after this very short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. With 43 votes in favour, 3 against and 7 abstentions, the Senate of Argentina approved the extension of the Indigenous Territorial Emergency Law, which suspends the eviction of indigenous communities from the lands they occupy for 4 more years. Our correspondent Carolina Silvestri has the details.
The extension of the Indigenous Territorial Emergency Law was approved in the Upper House. A demand of that was heard on Indigenous Resistance Day in front of the National Congress.
We find ourselves at this moment not only supporting Law 26-160, but also making our presence felt and standing firm, as we, the Querandí people, do. Our territories that we are once again taking care of, and where the sources of the rivers and waters are protected, because our way of life is to protect our environment. They want lithium, they want the territories to build mega enterprises, they set fire to the territories to build highways.
In the face of the stigmatization, persecution and subjugation of their rights by the Argentine right wing, the indigenous people of the country resist and respond.
Do you know what they tell us? That the biggest animal eats the smallest. And so what I want to respond is that the ants, the bees, although the bees have a queen, they take care of their queen, but then they take care of each other. They do not evict the other bees as they evict us every day, the indigenous peoples, the mestizo peoples, the poor people and the gringo peoples, who also mix among each other. It is systematic, and the system does this. You are with us or we destroy you. And it does not matter if you are one of us. If you have as much capital as we do, if you are not with us, we destroy you. And that is the clear indication of what is happening at the present.
In the session that took place in person, senators presented their position in the proposal of the ruling party.
We must address a solution. The truth is that many governments have passed and we are still looking at the same issue for various reasons. We have not found a solution, the survey, and situations are mixed up and complicate things.
According to the National Institute for Indigenous Affairs, there are approximately 1,760 indigenous communities in Argentina. Of the number, only 745 have been surveyed to date.
A large part is missing, and I agree that this cannot be underdetermined. I agree that we have to have control and also the issue of participation, because we are doing this in completely good faith for the benefit or in recognition or in reparation, I would say, of the peoples who have suffered this tremendous genocide. And so obviously it seems to me very appropriate that we do not look the other way.
Now it only remains for the lower house to consider and approve the extension of law 26.160, which expires on November the 2nd. This regulation was adopted in 2006 during the presidency of Néstor Carlos Kirchner.
Carolina Silvestre, TeleSUR, Buenos Aires.
The COP26 conference has begun in the Scottish city of Glasgow. The event's taking place at the Scottish Event Campus, the nation's largest exhibition centre. The COP26 summit will bring global parties together with the aim of accelerating action towards meeting the goals of the Paris Agreement and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Meanwhile, climate activists around the world are demanding the global financial system stop putting money into the use of fossil fuels. Activists are holding simultaneous events organised by the COP26 Coalition's Climate Justice Movement and have denounced that this year's conference is the most exclusionary in history, with thousands blocked from making their voices heard.
Friends, in each of our countries, we are seeing the devastating impact of a changing climate. Floods, cyclones, wildfires, record temperatures. And we know that our shared planet is changing for the worse. And we can only address that together through this international system. The rapidly changing climate is sounding an alarm to the world to step up on adaptation, to address loss and damage, and to act now to keep 1.5 alive. And we know that this COP26, is our last best hope to keep 1.5 in reach.
The Secretary-General of the World Meteorological Organization warned during a press conference at the COP26 Climate Conference in Glasgow that the world will see climate-related challenges for decades to come. The preliminary WMO State of the Global Climate Report, launched as the UN COP26 Climate Conference opened, warns that global warming from greenhouse gas emissions threatens far-reaching repercussions for current and future generations. Based on data for the first 9 months of the year, the UN Weather Agency said 2021 was likely to be between the 5th and 7th warmest year on record, despite the cooling effect of the La Niña phenomenon, which lowered temperatures at the beginning of the year.
Once they adopt,
My first question is,
this negative trend in climate will continue for the coming decades anyhow. So we will see more climate-related challenges. And the bad news is that we have already reached such a high concentration of carbon dioxide that the melting of glaciers and snow and ice and sea level rise will continue for much longer time, for the coming hundreds of years anyhow. But we are not yet on track to reach the Paris even 2-degree target, and we should do our utmost to reach those, and we should put pressure on heads of state to promise something, and because we have the means to do so. And we have to get a little bit rid of this kind of thinking that the economic growth next year is the holy cow. We should think of the welfare of people.
Pope Francis expressed hope that the COP26 summit getting underway in Glasgow will yield concrete and effective answers for future generations.
Today in Glasgow, in Scotland, the UN Summit on Climate Change is starting. COP26, let us pray so that the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor will be heard, and that this meeting may give effective answers offering concrete hope to future generations.
Addressing the G20 summit via video link on Sunday, Russian President Vladimir Putin said his country aimed to have lower greenhouse gas emissions than the European Union over the next 3 decades.
Russia, like other countries, is experiencing the negative consequences of global warming. We are experiencing desertification, soil erosion. We are especially concerned by the melting of the permafrost, which compromises a significant part of our territory. I will note that the average annual temperature in Russia is growing faster than the global average by more than 2.5%. In the past decade, it increased by nearly half a degree. In the Arctic, as you know, the speed of warming is even higher. Low-carbon energy is developing at a good pace in Russia. The share today of energy from near-zero carbon sources, including nuclear, hydro, wind and solar power stations, is over 40%. And if we include natural gas, which is the lowest carbon fuel of all hydrocarbons, this share is 86%, which is one of the highest figures in the world.
A small cargo ship carrying 382 people, almost all asylum seekers, was towed to the Greek island of Kos after being rescued at sea. The Coast Guard said Friday the Turkish-flagged freighter was located by a Greek search and rescue vessel east of the island of Crete, following a tip that it needed assistance. Officials said that the passengers were mostly male and from Afghanistan. Greece has made a formal request to Turkey to take back the ship. The European Union and Turkey have an agreement which obliges Turkey to take back those people crossing into the EU from its territory that are not granted asylum. But Turkey, which itself now hosts over 3 million refugees, continues to be reluctant. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's ruling Liberal Democratic Party held on to a majority in Sunday's parliamentary election, according to exit polls. The vote was seen as a key test amid growing frustrations over the party's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the stagnant economy. Fumio Kishida's predecessor, Yoshihide Suga, stepped down in September after just a year in office amid plummeting poll ratings for the LDP, following an unpopular push to continue with the Tokyo Olympics, despite public concern about surging COVID-19 rates. Despite retaining power, the ruling party's majority was weakened in Sunday's vote when 465 seats in the lower house, the more powerful of the two-chamber Japanese parliament, were up for grabs.
I focused on the candidates' policies on same-sex marriage and LGBT issues. I have many friends in gay or lesbian couples. I hope public understanding on these issues will deepen. I think coronavirus measures are important, but I'm also against policy that would oblige us to receive vaccines or make it a requirement to go to events. So I focused on this point when casting my vote.
North Macedonia held a second round of voting in local elections on Sunday in a runoff seen as a key test for the country's government. In the first round of municipal elections on October 17th, the centre-right opposition won mayor's post in 21 municipalities, while the ruling Social Democratic Party only won 9. Social Democrat leader and Prime Minister Zoran Zaev urged people to come out and vote, adding that the mayoral race in the capital is critical to completing his cabinet's vision and policies. A total of 33 mayors were elected in the first round of voting. The runoff is now for the remaining 47 mayor's posts, including in the capital, for which the main rivals are candidates from the ruling Social Democratic Party and the centre-right opposition. Pakistan's government and an outlawed radical Islamist party said Sunday they have reached an agreement to end a 10-day-long deadly rally. Neither the Pakistani Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi or religious leader Mufti Munir Rebham gave any details of the agreement at a news conference in the capital Islamabad. Calling it a victory for Pakistan and Islam, Rehman said more details would be forthcoming shortly. Thousands of supporters of the outlawed Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan party marched from Lahore on October 22nd toward the capital, demanding the expulsion of France's envoy to Pakistan over the publication of caricatures of Islam's Prophet Muhammad. The protest march saw supporters clash with police at several points along the way. At least 4 demonstrators were killed.
I want to make a request to the whole nation. This agreement is not a victory or defeat for anyone. This is a victory for Pakistan. This is a victory for Islam. This is a victory for patriotism, and this is the victory for integrity and protection of human lives. The forces that want to see chaos in the country can benefit, but on the other hand, the forces that want to see Pakistan stable and united, indeed, they are concerned. Allah gave us success, and this agreement has been fulfilled. We congratulate the whole nation, and we are thankful to all the leaders.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Italy as part of the G20 summit in what was their second face-to-face meeting amid escalating tensions between the two powers. The meeting in Rome was the first between Blinken and Wang since tense talks in Alaska in March, during which the Chinese delegation criticised the US side as TV cameras rolled. The strained relations between the world's 2 biggest economies stem from a series of US attacks on China, including in terms of trade, human rights, the Chinese territories of Hong Kong and Taiwan, and the COVID-19 pandemic. And we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.